Ethan Parker loved the quiet nights at the college observatory. Tonight was special. The sky was perfectly clear, and the stars seemed brighter than usual. He sat at his desk, checking the telescope readings for the third time. Something wasn't right. "That's impossible," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. The star he'd been watching for the past week was moving in a way stars shouldn't move. He took another sip of his now-cold coffee and looked at his computer screen again. The door creaked open behind him. "Still here, Ethan." Michael Thompson walked in, carrying 2 fresh cups of coffee. "I thought I'd find you glued to that telescope." "Mike, come look at this." Ethan waved his friend over. "Remember that new star I spotted last week? It's changed course again." Michael set down the coffees and leaned over Ethan's shoulder. His eyes widened as he watched the data stream across the screen. "Stars don't do that," he said slowly. "Exactly." Ethan pulled up a series of images he'd taken over the past week. "Look at the pattern. It's moving in a straight line, then changing direction every few days. That's not natural movement." The 2 men stared at the screen in silence. Outside, crickets chirped in the cool Montana night. The observatory's old heating system hummed quietly in the background. "Should we tell Rebecca?" Michael asked, referring to their department head. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. I need more data. Give me 2 more nights to confirm this isn't some kind of equipment error." Just then, a flash of light streaked across the sky outside the observatory window. Both men rushed to look. It wasn't like any shooting star they'd ever seen. Instead of burning out quickly, it pulsed with a steady, bright blue light. "Get the telescope on that, now," Michael shouted. Ethan's fingers flew over the keyboard, adjusting the telescope's position. The image on his screen made him catch his breath. The object was smooth and oval-shaped, about the size of a small car. Its surface rippled like water in moonlight. "Are we really seeing this?" Michael whispered. Before Ethan could answer, his equipment started going crazy. Readings spiked across his screens. The mysterious object was giving off energy patterns unlike anything in their database. "We need to record everything," Ethan said, hitting keys frantically. "No one's going to believe this without solid data." The next morning, Ethan sat in Rebecca Anderson's office, trying not to look as tired as he felt. He hadn't slept at all after what he'd seen. "Let me get this straight," Rebecca said, looking over her glasses at him. "You think you found an artificial object in our sky?" "I know how it sounds," Ethan replied, "but the data doesn't lie." He handed her a folder full of printouts. "These energy readings aren't natural. And the way it moves, it's being controlled by something." Rebecca flipped through the pages slowly. Her face grew more serious with each page. "This is concerning," she said finally. "Have you told anyone else about this?" "Just Michael. He was there last night." "Good. Keep it that way for now." She closed the folder carefully. "I need to make some calls. Government agencies will want to know about this." As Ethan walked back to his office, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his brother David. "Coming to visit next week. Need to talk." Ethan groaned. His skeptical brother was the last person he needed around right now. David would never believe what was happening without solid proof. That evening, Ethan drove out to his favorite spot in the wilderness, a small clearing perfect for setting up portable telescopes. He needed to see the object again, away from the college's equipment. Maybe he'd missed something. The sun was setting, painting the Montana sky in shades of orange and purple. As darkness fell, he saw it again. The strange blue light moving across the sky. But this time it was lower, and it was getting closer. Then something went wrong. The light flickered, dimmed, and suddenly dropped toward the earth like a stone. Ethan watched in shock as it disappeared behind the distant trees. A few seconds later, a dull boom echoed across the valley. Without thinking twice, Ethan jumped into his truck. Whatever had just fallen from the sky, he had to find it. He didn't know it yet, But this decision would change his life forever. Ethan's truck bounced over the rough dirt road as he followed the direction of the crash. His headlights cut through the darkness, showing nothing but trees and rocks. The moon hung high in the sky, casting silver light over the Montana wilderness. He stopped when he saw a faint blue glow between the trees. Grabbing his flashlight and emergency kit, he stepped out of the truck. The air felt strange, warm and tingly, like standing too close to a TV screen. "Hello," he called out, walking toward the light. "Is anyone there?" The blue glow got stronger as he pushed through the bushes. Then he saw it, a clearing that hadn't been there before. Trees lay flat in a perfect circle, and in the middle sat the oval-shaped object he'd seen in the sky. It was beautiful up close, its surface moving like liquid metal in the moonlight. A soft humming filled the air. As Ethan watched, a section of the craft's surface rippled and opened. Light poured out, so bright he had to shield his eyes. When he looked again, his heart nearly stopped. A figure stood in the opening, tall and slender, with skin that seemed to glow from within. What really caught his attention were the wings, not solid like bird wings, but made of pure light that shifted and moved like the northern lights. The being took a step forward and stumbled. Without thinking, Ethan rushed forward to help. As he caught her, somehow he knew it was her. He felt a gentle warmth spread through his body. "Thank you," she said, her voice sounding like wind chimes. "My universal translator seems to be working correctly." "Are you hurt?" Ethan asked, still supporting her weight. Up close, she looked almost human, except for her glowing skin and those amazing wings. "The crash damaged my physical form," she replied. "I need time to recover." She looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them. "I am Ariel. I come from what you would call the celestial realm." "I'm Ethan. Ethan Parker." He helped her sit on a fallen log. "I'm an astronomy professor. I've been tracking your ship for the past week." Ariel smiled, and the entire clearing seemed to brighten. "Yes, I know. Your observations made me choose this location. Your world has advanced enough to notice us, but not enough to fear us yet." A branch cracked in the darkness. Ariel's wings flared with light, then quickly dimmed. "Others must not find me," she said urgently. "My presence here is complicated." "You can come with me," Ethan offered, surprising himself. "I have a cabin nearby. It's private, away from the city." She studied him for a moment. "You would help me, even though I am not human. You need help. That's all that matters right now." Ariel stood shakily. Her wings had faded until they were almost invisible. "My ship will protect itself," she said, "but I must gather some things first." She walked back to the craft, moving with grace despite her injury. When she returned, she carried a small crystal that pulsed with inner light. "This will help me maintain my form," she explained. They walked slowly back to Ethan's truck. Every few steps, Ariel would look up at the stars with an expression of longing. Ethan had dozens of questions, but he kept quiet, focusing on helping her walk. At the truck, she paused. "You should know," she said seriously. "Helping me could be dangerous. My people do not usually interact directly with humans." "I'm already involved," Ethan replied, opening the passenger door. "Besides, this is the discovery of a lifetime. A real celestial being." "Not just a being," Ariel said softly as she got in. "Among my people, I am special. That's why I had to come here." As Ethan drove them back to his cabin, he noticed his instruments going crazy in his bag. The radio played static, and his phone screen flickered. Whatever Ariel was, she affected everything electronic around her. He glanced at her in the passenger seat. She was looking out the window, one hand pressed against the glass, watching the trees pass by. In the dashboard lights, she looked almost normal, until you noticed how her skin seemed to pulse gently with its own light. "Your world is so solid," she whispered, "so wonderfully real." Ethan didn't know what to say to that, But as he drove through the dark Montana night with an alien angel in his truck, he knew his life would never be the same again. 1 week after the crash, Ethan stood nervously in Rebecca Anderson's office. Ariel sat beside him, looking perfectly human in borrowed clothes. Her natural glow had been dimmed to a healthy-looking shine that could pass for good skincare. "So, Ms. Ariel Light," Rebecca said, reading from a paper, "you're interested in joining our research team." Her eyes narrowed slightly at the simple last name Ethan had chosen. "Yes," Ariel replied smoothly. "I study Professor Parker's work on stellar phenomena. I find his theories fascinating." She smiled, and for a moment her skin brightened before she caught herself. Rebecca didn't seem to notice. "Your credentials are impressive. Though I must say, I've never heard of the Celestial Institute of Advanced Studies. It's a private research center." Ethan cut in quickly. "Very exclusive." "I see." Rebecca tapped her pen on the desk. "Well, we do have an opening for a visiting researcher. When can you start?" "Tomorrow would be perfect," Ariel said. Later, in Ethan's office, Michael closed the door and turned to them. "That was too close. Rebecca's not stupid. She'll check those credentials eventually." "The documents will hold up," Ariel assured him. She touched the crystal hanging around her neck. "My technology can maintain simple deceptions like paper records." "Simple?" Michael shook his head in wonder. "You created a complete academic history overnight." "Speaking of technology," Ethan said, "how are the repair parts coming along?" Ariel's wings flickered briefly into view before she controlled them again. "The fabrication is slow. Earth materials are different from what I'm used to. It could take months." "Months?" Both men stared at her. "Is that a problem?" she asked, genuinely curious. Ethan ran his hands through his hair. "We'll figure something out. For now, you need to work on blending in better. No glowing in public, no matter how excited you get." "I'm trying." Ariel looked down at her hands. "Everything here makes me feel so much. Your world is full of emotions I never knew existed." A knock at the door made them all jump. "Ethan." It was Rebecca's voice. "Do you have a moment?" Michael quickly opened a laptop and pretended to be working. Ariel picked up a book and sat in the corner chair. "Come in," Ethan called, trying to sound normal. Rebecca entered with a stack of papers. "I've been looking at the energy readings from last week." She spread the papers on Ethan's desk. "The object you tracked, it vanished from our instruments completely." "Maybe it left Earth's atmosphere," Ethan suggested, not looking at Ariel. "Maybe." Rebecca frowned. "But we're still getting strange power fluctuations around the campus, especially near the observatory." She looked directly at him. "Any theories about that?" Before Ethan could answer, his phone buzzed. It was another text from his brother David. "Flight landed. Be there in an hour." Ethan felt his stomach drop. He'd completely forgotten about David's visit. "I should go," Ariel said suddenly, standing up. "I need to prepare for tomorrow." She walked out, managing to look perfectly human until she was out of Rebecca's sight. "Interesting person, your new researcher," Rebecca said, watching her leave. "Where did you say she was from again?" "She didn't say." Michael jumped in. "Very private person." That evening, Ethan paced in his living room while Ariel watched from the couch. "David can't know about you," he said. "He doesn't believe in anything he can't explain with pure science." "I am pure science," Ariel replied. "Just not Earth science." She stood and walked to him, her feet barely touching the ground. "Ethan, why does his opinion matter so much?" Ethan stopped pacing. "He's my brother, and he works for a government research lab. If he suspects anything." A car door slammed outside. Ariel's wings suddenly appeared, glowing with anxiety. "They're here. Quick, remember what we practiced," Ethan whispered urgently. By the time David walked in, Ariel looked perfectly normal, sitting on the couch with a book. But Ethan noticed she was holding it upside down. "Hey, brother," David called out, then stopped when he saw Ariel. "Oh, you have company." David, this is Ariel. She's a new researcher at the college. Ethan held his breath, praying nothing would go wrong. Nice to meet you, David said, studying her with the same intense look he used in his lab. Ariel smiled and stood to shake his hand. As their hands touched, every light in the house flickered once. David looked up at the ceiling, then back at Ariel. Weird power grid out here in the mountains. Yes, Ariel said carefully. Very weird. David stayed at Ethan's house for 3 days, and they were the longest 3 days of Ethan's life. Every moment was filled with worry that Ariel's true nature would be discovered. She played her part well, but little things kept happening that were hard to explain. The microwave would start by itself when she walked past. Lights would brighten whenever she laughed. And once, when David surprised her in the hallway, her shadow on the wall had wings. On the 4th morning, after David left for the airport, Ethan found Ariel in the observatory, staring at the stars through the telescope. I miss home, she said without turning around. But not as much as I thought I would. Tell me about it, Ethan said softly. About your world. Ariel turned to him, and for a moment, her human form faded slightly, showing the pure light beneath. The celestial realm exists between dimensions, she explained. We are beings of pure energy, but we can take solid form when we want to. Like you are now. Yes. She smiled, and small sparks of light danced around her hair. But this form, it's becoming more natural to me. I'm changing, Ethan. Being here, being solid, it's affecting me in ways I didn't expect. She walked to the window, leaving tiny footprints of light that faded after a few seconds. My people have watched Earth for centuries. We saw your first fires, your first cities, your first steps into space. But we never understood why you chose to stay in physical form when you could become beings of pure energy. We can do that, Ethan asked, surprised. Some humans, eventually. That's why we watch you. Your species has the potential to evolve into something like us. But, she turned to him, her eyes glowing softly. I'm starting to think we're the ones who need to evolve. To remember what it's like to feel solid things, to experience life as you do. Ethan stepped closer to her. Is that why you came here? I came because I was curious. But I'm staying because... She reached out and touched his hand. A warm tingle spread up his arm. Because I've never felt so alive. The door opened suddenly, and Michael burst in. We have a problem, he said, out of breath. Rebecca's been asking questions at other universities. She knows the Celestial Institute doesn't exist. Ariel's form flickered with worry. My deception is failing. We need a new plan, Ethan said. Fast. Just then, all the computers in the room turned on by themselves. The screen showed the same message. Return home immediately. No, Ariel whispered, her wings becoming visible with her distress. They've noticed I'm changing. They want me back. Who wants you back? Michael asked. The Celestial Council. My leaders. She looked at Ethan with fear in her glowing eyes. They don't understand why I'm choosing to stay solid for so long. They think I'm becoming corrupted. Are you? Ethan asked gently. If feeling real emotions is corruption, then yes. She straightened up, her wings spreading wide. But I don't want to go back to being just light and energy. I want to stay here. I want to learn what it means to be human. The computers flickered again, the message changing. Final warning. Michael looked between them. What happens if you refuse? They could strip me of my powers, Ariel said. Or worse, pull me back forcibly. But they don't understand. When I'm with Ethan, I feel something they've never experienced. Something worth fighting for. She reached for Ethan's hand again, and this time when they touched, the entire room lit up with a soft golden glow. Every machine in the observatory hummed with energy. We'll figure something out, Ethan promised, squeezing her hand. Together. Outside the observatory window, a new star appeared in the morning sky. bright and pulsing with angry red light. The Celestial Council was watching, and they weren't happy. "They're coming," Ariel said quietly. "And we don't have much time." The crystal around Ariel's neck was growing dimmer each day. She sat in Ethan's living room, holding it up to the morning light, watching it flicker weakly. "It's not working anymore," she said, her voice shaking. "My connection to the celestial realm is fading." Ethan sat beside her on the couch. Over the past weeks, he had watched her become more solid, more human. Her natural glow now only showed when she was emotional, and her wings appeared less often. "Is it painful?" he asked, worried by the look on her face. "No," she smiled softly. "It feels natural, like falling asleep slowly." She looked at her hands. "I can feel everything more clearly now. The warmth of the sun, the roughness of wood, the softness of fabric." A knock at the door made them both jump. It was Michael, carrying a stack of papers and looking worried. "Rebecca's gone to the government," he said without greeting. She showed them the energy readings from the observatory. "They're sending a team to investigate." Ethan felt his heart sink. "When?" 2 days. Michael dropped the papers on the table. "And that's not all. Look at these new readings." The papers showed energy patterns spreading out from the college in a spiral pattern. At the center was a bright spot that moved between the observatory and Ethan's house. "That's me," Ariel said quietly. "My energy is spreading into the environment as I become more physical." She stood up and walked to the window. "I can't control it anymore." Outside, the angry red star that had appeared last week was now visible even in daylight. The Celestial Council was watching, waiting. "We need to leave," Ethan said suddenly. "Get away from the college before they come." "They'll find me anywhere on Earth," Ariel replied. "And I." She stumbled slightly, catching herself on the wall. "I don't think I can travel far like this." Ethan moved to help her, but when their hands touched, something new happened. A surge of energy passed between them, making all the lights in the house explode in a shower of sparks. Ariel's wings appeared, brighter than ever, but now they seemed to be made of real feathers instead of light. "That's not supposed to happen," she whispered, staring at her wings in shock. Michael rushed to the window and pulled the curtains shut. "The whole street just lost power," he reported. "We need to get her somewhere safe now." They helped Ariel to Ethan's truck, hiding her wings under a large coat. As they drove toward the mountains, she explained what was happening. "My people can choose to take physical form, but we're not supposed to stay in it this long. The longer we remain solid, the more permanent it becomes." She touched her wings gently. "I'm not just copying human form anymore. I'm actually becoming something new." "Because of me?" Ethan asked, remembering the energy surge. "Because I chose this," she said firmly. "Because for the first time in my existence, I want to feel everything, not just observe it." They reached Ethan's cabin just as the sun was setting. The red star pulsed angrily overhead, and now there were other lights gathering around it. "More your people?" Michael asked, looking up. "Yes, a containment team." Ariel's voice was bitter. "They think I'm sick, corrupted by physical existence. They want to save me. And if they can't..." Ethan helped her out of the truck, supporting her as she stumbled again. "Then they'll try to remove me forcibly, even if it destroys this form." She looked at him, her eyes now more human than star-filled. "I won't go back, Ethan. I can't. Not now that I know what it means to truly feel." Inside the cabin, they watched through the window as more lights gathered in the sky. The air felt heavy with electricity, and in the distance, they could hear the hum of approaching helicopters. "They're coming," Michael said quietly. "Both your people and ours." Ariel stood straighter, her wings spreading wide. "Then we'll face them together." The helicopters arrived first. Their searchlights cut through the darkness, sweeping across the trees around Ethan's cabin. Above them, the red star had grown larger, and other lights danced around it like angry fireflies. Inside the cabin, Ethan, Ariel, and Michael watched through the windows. Ariel's wings were now fully physical, white feathers with traces of light running through them like glowing veins. Government vehicles coming up the road, Michael reported from his position at the back window. Looks like military too. Suddenly, the crystal around Ariel's neck shattered. She gasped as pieces fell to the floor, each shard fading into nothing as it hit the ground. "They're cutting my connection," she said, her voice shaking. "The council is forcing me to choose. Become fully physical or return to pure energy." A voice boomed from outside, amplified by speakers. "This is a restricted area. We have the building surrounded. Come out with your hands up." At the same moment, a beam of light shot down from the red star, hitting the ground in front of the cabin. It took the shape of a tall, glowing figure with wings of pure energy. "Ariel," the figure's voice echoed in their minds. "You have broken our most sacred laws. Return to the celestial realm for purification." Ethan stepped closer to Ariel, taking her hand. It felt warm and solid, so different from the first time they touched. "What happens if you go back?" he asked quietly. "They'll strip away everything I've become," she replied. "All my memories of being physical, all my feelings." She squeezed his hand. "Everything I feel for you." The glowing figure moved closer. "Your corruption spreads, Ariel. Look at yourself, trapped in flesh, bound by gravity, infected with human emotions." "It's not corruption," Ariel shouted back. "It's growth. We were wrong about humans. Their physical form isn't a limitation. It's what makes them special. They feel everything so deeply, love so completely." "Love." The figure's light flickered with disgust. "You speak of primitive impulses. You were meant for greater things." More vehicles arrived outside. They could hear doors slamming, people shouting orders. David's voice cut through the chaos. "Let me talk to my brother." "Time's up," Michael said. "What's the plan?" Ariel looked at Ethan, her eyes now fully human but still beautiful. "I have to choose," she said. "But I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of losing who I am. If I go back, they'll erase what makes me, me. But if I stay, if I become fully human," she spread her wings, which were now more feather than light, "I might lose my connection to the stars forever." The front door burst open. David rushed in, followed by men in dark uniforms. At the same moment, more beams of light appeared around the first one, their combined glow turning night into day. "Last warning, Ariel," the first being said. "Return to your true form." David looked between his brother and Ariel, his face showing shock as he saw her wings. "Ethan, what have you gotten involved in?" "The truth, David," Ethan said, not letting go of Ariel's hand. "Sometimes it's more wonderful than any science can explain." Ariel straightened up, her wings spreading wide. The soldiers raised their weapons, but David shouted, "Wait." "I choose," Ariel said, her voice strong and clear. She looked at the beams of light, then at Ethan, then at her own hands. "I choose to be more than what I was made to be. I choose to grow beyond my origins." The beams of light moved closer, their energy making the air crackle. The soldiers tensed, fingers on triggers. Michael and David stood frozen, watching, and Ethan held Ariel's hand tightly, ready to face whatever came next. "I choose," Ariel said again, glowing brighter than ever, "to become human." The moment Ariel made her choice, everything changed. A blast of light filled the cabin, throwing everyone back against the walls. Everyone except Ethan, who somehow stayed on his feet, still holding Ariel's hand. "No," the celestial beings' voices shook the building. "You cannot choose this." But Ariel was already changing. Her glow began to fade, not dimming but sinking into her skin. Her wings, now fully feathered, folded against her back. She gripped Ethan's hand tighter as pain crossed her face. "What's happening to her?" David asked, picking himself up from the floor. "The impossible," the lead celestial being said. "She's forcing her energy into permanent physical form." The soldiers had lowered their weapons, staring in wonder. Michael was filming everything on his phone, his hands shaking. Outside, the red star pulsed with angry light. "It hurts," Ariel whispered to Ethan. "Being born into flesh, it hurts so much." "I'm here," he said, supporting her as she trembled. "You're not alone." The celestial beings moved closer, their light dimming with what looked like sadness. "Sister, this transformation cannot be undone. You will be trapped in that form, bound by time, subject to death itself." "I know," Ariel said through clenched teeth. "I choose it anyway." David stepped forward, his scientific mind racing. "The energy readings are off the charts. She's actually changing her fundamental structure." "Back away from her," the lead being commanded. "We can still reverse this." But Ethan stood his ground. "No, this is her choice." Suddenly, Ariel screamed. Light poured from her eyes and mouth, shooting up through the cabin's roof. The celestial beings tried to catch it, to pull it back, but the light curved away from them and crashed back into Ariel's body like lightning. The impact knocked everyone down. When they looked up, Ariel was kneeling on the floor, breathing hard. Her wings were smaller now, white and feathered like a bird's. Her skin no longer glowed but had a warm, human tone. And when she opened her eyes, they were a deep blue instead of star-filled. "It's done," she said softly, touching her face with trembling hands. "I'm solid, completely solid." The lead celestial being moved forward, its light dimmed to a soft glow. "You have chosen to fall, sister, to become less." "No." Ariel stood up, wobbling slightly as she got used to feeling real weight. "I've chosen to become something different. Not less, not more, just new." David walked around her slowly, his scanner beeping. She's giving off normal human life signs, but he looked at her wings in amazement. She's kept some of her celestial traits. She's both human and angel. "Impossible," the celestial beings whispered together. "Apparently not," Michael said, still filming. "She's proof that evolution can go both ways." The soldiers had lowered their weapons completely now. Their commander spoke into his radio. "Stand down. This is a first contact situation, not a threat." Ariel took a step forward and stumbled, not used to her new, fully physical body. Ethan caught her, and when their skin touched, a small spark jumped between them, much smaller than before, but still there. "The council will not accept this," the lead being warned. "They will see it as contamination of our pure form." "Then maybe it's time for the council to learn something new," Ariel replied. She stretched her wings, testing them. They moved like real wings now, stirring the air. "Maybe it's time for all of us to grow." The red star overhead began to fade. The celestial beings looked at each other, then at Ariel one last time. "You have chosen your path," they said together. "May you find what you seek in this limited form." As they faded away, Ariel turned to face the others in the cabin. She looked tired but happy, more real than she'd ever been. "So," David said, breaking the silence, "I guess I have a celestial being for a future sister-in-law." Ethan and Ariel both blushed, but neither denied it. 3 months after Ariel's transformation, the college observatory was busier than ever. Scientists from around the world came to study the place where a celestial being had chosen to become human. But today was special for a different reason. Ethan stood at the front of the crowded lecture hall, watching Ariel prepare for her first public presentation. She wore a specially designed jacket that allowed her wings to spread freely. Though smaller than their original form, they still drew gasps of wonder from everyone who saw them. "Ready?" he asked as she adjusted the microphone. "As ready as I'll ever be," she smiled. Her voice had lost its chime-like quality, but was still musical. "At least David helped me practice." David sat in the front row, next to Michael and Rebecca. After everything that happened, Rebecca had become one of their strongest supporters, helping to manage the sudden fame that came with being the site of humanity's first official contact with celestial beings. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ariel began, I'm here to talk about the bridge between energy and matter, between light and flesh, between watching life and living it. The room fell silent. Even after months of study, people were still amazed to see her, living proof that evolution could work in unexpected ways. My people believed that pure energy was the highest form of existence, she continued. We were wrong. There is no highest form, only different ways of being. And sometimes, the most growth comes from choosing a new path. She spread her wings slightly, and sunlight from the windows made the feathers shimmer. In the back of the room, government officials nodded approvingly. After the initial panic, they had realized that Ariel's choice to become human was the best possible first contact scenario. The Celestial Council has begun sending observers, she said, showing images of light beings carefully interacting with human scientists. Not to study humans as specimens anymore, but to learn from them as equals. Some of these observers have even started experimenting with physical form themselves. Ethan smiled, remembering how shocked everyone had been when the first celestial being had requested permission to try living as a human for a week. Now there was a whole program for it, with David leading the scientific studies. But the most important discovery wasn't scientific, Ariel said, her eyes finding Ethan's. It was personal. My people thought human emotions were a weakness. Instead, they are your greatest strength. You feel everything so deeply, love so completely, live so fully. She touched the simple ring on her finger, a gift from Ethan last week, when he had asked her to marry him under the stars she once called home. I chose to become human because I fell in love, she said simply. Not just with one person, but with all of it. The joy and pain, the limits and freedoms, the amazing experience of being alive in a physical world. The audience broke into applause. In the front row, Michael wiped away a tear while pretending to clean his glasses. Rebecca beamed proudly, and David gave Ethan a thumbs up. After the presentation, they all gathered in Ethan's office. The same office where they had once hidden Ariel's true nature was now decorated with photos of their journey. Her first snow, first ice cream, first dance in the rain. The council sent another message. David reported, checking his phone. They're officially recognizing human-celestial relationships as a valid path of evolution. Better late than never, Michael laughed. Ariel stood by the window, looking at the sky where the angry red star had once been. Now the view showed only peaceful blue, with occasional flashes of light as celestial beings came and went freely. Any regrets? Ethan asked, joining her. She turned to him, her eyes bright with very human tears of joy. Only that I didn't do it sooner. She stretched her wings, now as natural to her as arms and legs. Sometimes the best way to touch the stars is to stand firmly on the ground. Outside, the sun set on another day of her new life, painting the sky in colors she could now feel as well as see. And in the growing darkness, tiny sparks of light danced between her feathers, a reminder that in choosing to become human, she hadn't lost her celestial nature. She had simply found a new way to shine.